Hi there. I hope you're having a great day and I hope that you're doing something that gives you a lot of pleasure. For me, it would be sewing or embroidering or crafting. I am Karen DeFord. I work for Cynthia's of Bend. I work as a service technician and I also help with the embroidery club, facilitate it. I teach beginning sewing. I do project classes in embroidery. Here at our house at DeFord Ranch, we do custom embroidery and sublimation. And so today I wanted to talk about thread, bobbins, and needles. Fascinating subject. Have you ever wondered why the number gets bigger on thread and it's smaller? I've wondered that. 60 weight thread, for instance, is really for those very small letters. If you use a 40 weight thread, it's not going to be as clear on one of those micro letters. So 60 weight would be good for that. Sometimes there's some patterns that ask for 12 weight thread, and then you're going to brush it with a wire brush to make it have hair. I have a cat pattern that does that, and you brush it, and then the cat has hair. I don't really know why that's a really cool thing, but uh, the person I did it for thought it was cool. I thought, why am I destroying this thread? But, to each his own. I wanted to show you that there's all kinds of threads out there. My friend Joy, with the embroidery club at Cynthia's of Bend, brought me in an entire bag of aged thread. Ladies, gentlemen, aging your thread really isn't the best thing. Do you want to spend 8 hours embroidering something and then a week later start having the hairs on your embroidery work and it's not a cat design? Well, it's because your thread is breaking after you've sewn it. All of us have probably experienced an old quilt where the thread has rotted and the fabric has rotted and it stinks bad. My friend Amber and I redid a quilt for a woman that was having it redone for her significant other. But anyway, she wanted to redo it. It was an act of love. And there were several ladies that said it couldn't be done, but I figured it could be done. And so my friend Amber and I proceeded to replace all of the rotten fabric, and then we had to feather stitch around every block because the thread had rotted in many places. And then well, we could talk about that later if you ever want to know how to deal with a stinky, rotten quilt. But today we're talking about needles, bobbins, and thread. So my friend Joy brought me this thread, some of it, and I wanted to show you that thread has a tensile strength. And what that means is threads are made up of different fibers. And so as you can see, though, this thread on this spool looks like a chipmunk ate it. Or maybe Buddy, my dog, ate it, but he didn't. I got this directly out of the bag that Joy gave me. And I don't care which way you turn it, that thread's going to try to come off that spool, and it's going to catch on the, oh, and you're going to do that, and then you're going to have this. And you're going to say, why did that happen? Well, it happened because the spool has been chewed on. Also, the thread is brittle. So anytime you go to a thrift store and you say, oh, wow, there's an entire bag of thread, you might want to rethink that really cheap price because you're going to get tensile strength that is not good and it's going to break. So old thread is not good thread. In Central Oregon, we have a very dry environment here on DeFord Ranch. It's extremely dusty. And you'll see that I do not have any thread on the wall hanging there because it's going to dry your thread out. And you will see that I have thread up here on the big machine, but you also will notice that I have a piece of gauze over it to protect it from thread and from fluorescent light, which is also not good for thread. Somebody told me recently that you could rehydrate your thread by putting it in the refrigerator. And I thought to myself, oh, so then you have weak thread that's now moist. Moist, weak thread. I just don't think that's a good combination. Don't waste your time sewing something or embroidering something with weak, cheap thread. Just don't do it. It's a waste of your time. But I will also share with you that my mother made me a swimming suit one time. It was a two-piece and I was so cute. But she used cotton thread. And when you go into the chlorine pool after a few swims, and then I went to the river with my uncle, my bathing suit started coming apart because the thread had broken. So don't do that either. You can get a special thread that's for sewing swimming suits and it will withstand the chlorine, hopefully. So you can buy finishing touch or bobbin thread if you're one of those people that want to wind your own bobbins. I do not like to wind bobbins, and so I always buy pre-wound bobbin. Bill has some at Cynthia's bin. Remember, you get a 20% discount the day of your class. Now, all these needles, I have them in drawers. Universal, embroidery, jeans, quilting, sharps, metallics. Metallics have a bigger eye because if any of you have worked with metallic thread, you know that it is a pain. So older metallic threads, I don't mean aged wise, but the ones that were developed, I would say 10 years ago, they have to be set about 10 feet from your machine and allowed to relax before it goes through the eye of the needle or it'll knot up repeatedly. Madeira has developed a new metallic thread that goes through the needle fine without that 10 feet space, but you kind of have to diagnose it for yourself. Now, I bought this thread, Solar Active, at one of those solar stores, and I have not used it because who wants to embroider and have it be white, everything on the inside when there's no light, sun? And then you go outside and it looks really cool, but I like my embroidery to look really cool all the time. So I am actually waiting for somebody to tell me that they really want something embroidered with white thread that turns to a different color when they're in the sun. I don't know who that is. I did sew a name for a pediatrician that said that when she went into her patient's room at the nighttime, she'd like them to be able to see who she was. So she had me do her scrubs with thread that absorbed light and then glowed in the dark. Glow in the dark thread is really cool for that, but it's also cool at Halloween time for those, you know, you're going to do those trick or treat bags. You probably want to use that kind of thread so that your little trick or treater has a little fluorescent glow in the dark design that might keep them safe at night for somebody won't run them over. There's sewing thread, there's serger thread, there's embroidery thread. Now, somebody asked me, why can't you embroider with sewing thread? Well, you can, but embroidery thread is actually made so that it has different effects. You can have a matte thread that you'll stitch your design out with, and you'll see that it looks more like an ethnic design or something from the 70s where it's matte, and you could Kimberly did one at the shop that had alpaca, and it was so cute because it actually looked, it was cool. And there's monofilament thread, and I would unwind it and show it to you, except that it's see-through. Now, you probably want to use that on certain projects where you're stitching and you don't want the stitching to show. There's water-soluble thread. Don't use that on clothing or swimming suit because you'll be embarrassed. But you might want to use it if you are stitching something that you actually don't want the backing to be on. As we all know that if you're going to stitch lace, freestanding lace, you want to match your bobbin to your top thread. So you're going to have to wind those bobbins. Guess what? I don't do a lot of freestanding lace because I don't have the patience for it and I don't want to wind the bobbins. So needles come in all different sizes, as I was saying, and some are meant for projects you're using stretch fabric or elastic. You want to get the right kind of stretch needle. And jean, that's quilting, that's universal. Jean needles can be used to make rope bowls. You want a strong needle, you're going to stitch something, a purse, denim, rope bowls, use a jeans needle. They will hold up to the abuse. When you're starting to have trouble with your thread on your machine, you actually want to take a moment and look at your needle. So these are all new needles. That was a hand sewing needle. It's not really appropriate for this. But you want to look at your needle. I have taken needles directly out of a brand new package and they've been crooked. And so if you're having trouble stitching and it's not picking up, just hold it up and look at the needle. Also, if you've been sewing a while, feel it. If it's got a little burr on it because maybe it hit your needle plate or maybe it hit, one of those pins that you ran over, you might have a little burr on it. That's going to cause you trouble when you're sewing. My advice to anybody when they're having trouble, first thing you want to check, needles, threads, bobbins, because that's the things that'll cause you trouble first. Now, somebody came in to Cynthia's and was complaining that their machine didn't work right. And I couldn't figure it out, but it just kept messing up until I took a good look at their metal bobbin. And I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it's bent. So it's bent a little bit. Well, it wasn't turning correctly because it was bent. So that could cause a problem. Also, if your dog chews your bobbin and you have those little rough edges, it's also not going to sew right. Throw it away. Just get it out of your machine, throw it away. You will be so much happier to not have dealt with a needle with burrs on it, a bobbin that's bent, a bobbin that's been chewed on. You just really want a good bobbin and you want good thread. When you put thread into a bobbin case like this is not the right bobbin for this, but if you go like this and you pull it through that tension and it breaks, it is not your bobbin case. It is the thread. Throw that thread away. Do not save it in a bag like Joy's friend, because you might not have Karen on the other end that'll say, give me all that old thread because I need some old thread. Just show people not to use that old thread. So I thank Bill and Katie, Fellows, and Cynthia's have been for allowing me to bring this video to you. I hope that you found it at least a little bit interesting. If not, then you can email me through Cynthia's a bin and suggest topics for a different video you might want to see. Happy sewing, and we'll see you next time.